to edition 75 of Old Killa No Filla podcast with me, Rachel Fairburn and Kiri Pritchard-McLean. Just before we start, we'll do our usual disclaimer. This isn't hero worship. We do this podcast because of mutual interest in serial killers. As long as we are doing this podcast, it stops us from writing them in prison. Gets longer every time, that disclaimer.
Merry Christmas, everybody. If you're listening to this on Christmas Day, we hope you're having a nice one. I appreciate this is be the weirdest one a lot of people have had. For some people, it'll be the nicest one they've had. And maybe you're on your own. Maybe you're enjoying your company on your own. Maybe you're sat there surrounded by the people wishing you were on your own. But we hope, however you are listening to this, that you're having a nice time. Maybe you're listening to this in June in like 2030 and you're like, what are they on about? So for some historical context, it's the middle of a global pandemic. We're recording this on Christmas Eve and it's Christmas Day when it should get released. So Nadolig Llawen, as we say in Wales.
Yeah, have a good one, as we say in Manchester.
Oh, do you know, have I told you?
You should, we will say as well, there's a bit of a delay on us recording because obviously we're not in the same place. There might be a bit of, distance between us both speaking, but we'll work it out. It'll be fine.
Should be fine in the edit.
Have you tell me about what?
Yeah, it should be fine in the edit. I don't want you to listen to this and think, oh God, their chemistry's gone. It's just because we're both dealing with rural internet, which is quite difficult. Have I told you what... Have I told you what Father Christmas is in Welsh? Have I told you this?
No.
Father Christmas in Welsh is Sean Corn. Maybe you can roll your R.
Sean Corn.
Well, Sean Corn, really, you roll your R. But my partner is now obsessed with this and keeps laughing about it because he's like, it's like saying that Father Christmas is called Sean Bean or Paul Onions is the other one. Gary Soup was the idea that he came up with. But yeah, Sean Corn is what it's called in Wales. And then my partner went and did like the big shop before Christmas, and Cornflakes are doing like a special edition of Cornflakes with a vintage painting of Father Christmas on the front. And he came running in like as straight out the car. He'd been away for like 2 hours at like Lidl and Aldi, and he's like heaving shoulders, panting, and he's like, Sean Cornflakes. And so yeah, he's now thrilled that he can pun in another language.
Oh my God, that's brilliant. But the thing is, I can imagine him doing that. It's perfect. Sean Corn.
Where are you at? Paint a picture for us of your Christmas Day.
I'm in Lincolnshire at my Tim's family's. Tim's dad's had an operation. He's so much better, which is lovely. And
great.
We've what am I doing? It's a lovely countryside setting, but I'll tell you what, I really enjoy being in the countryside. I like walking, you know. I've got my wellies on and everything. I'm sorted, you know what I mean? I just need a body warmer. But I went for a walk the other day in a forest and no one around. I was with Tim and the dog, Bella. And as I'm walking up the thing, there was a pheasant, which very rare pheasant apparently, which was walking in front of us. It turns out it was trying to protect its nest. Then Tim says to me, oh, look, there's deer over there. And I went, oh, yeah. And then he said, we might have to be careful, though. And I went, why? And there was a massive stag. And I've never seen one in the wild or in real life before. And it was fucking huge. And it stopped and looked at us. And he went, come on, we need to turn around and leave now. And I swear to God, I've never been so frightened in my life. I couldn't look back. And I was like, is it behind us? Is it there? And he's going, no, it's okay, everything's fine. I'm going, you're lying to me, it's following us. And I could sort of hear a noise that I thought was a stag walking behind us, but it was just Tim's Wellington boots squeaking. Honest to God, my heart was beating out of my chest. The only time, like, it looked exactly like that Monarch of the Glen painting that's in the Edinburgh Art Gallery. It was huge. And it proper gave us, like, it looked at us and was like, what are you fucking doing here? And I'm like, oh God, this is awful. Anyway, getting out of this forest, and then Tim goes, oh, look, he's there on the left. And I'm not even joking, I nearly fucking shit myself. And he was lying. What a cruel trick. What a nasty little trick, that. And honestly, the things that went through my head, I was like, right, what do I do if it comes after us? Am I going to have to fight it? Do I climb a tree? Do I play dead? Is it a bear? I don't know. Like, honestly, I've never been so fucking frightened in my life. Huge.
There's no stag protocol, is there? Like, you know, when in certain parts of the world that children practice for earthquakes, like we should have, if you live in a rural area of Scotland or sort of the middle of the country, you should have a stag practice in school.
Yeah, I think that. But also, Tim's mum runs a preschool in the grounds of this place, and sometimes they have a thing called forest school. So that's when they take the kids into the forest area and they, you know, get a bit rustic and give him a bit of outdoor time and all that malarkey. Lovely idea. But I was like, what the fuck happens if the stag comes during forest school? And Tim went, that is a really good question. I don't think there's anything in place for that. But then I got really mean laughing at the idea of a stag just fucking attacking a load of kids.
Just booting some kids playing a game.
Yeah, booting around.
I think the stags aren't really that aggressive. Well, no, I think they're aggressive to other stags in mating season, but I think largely they'll leave you alone.
Well, I got home and I Googled it, right? So I was like, people killed by stags. Anyway, it turns out, I was telling my mum about it, a friend of hers that she worked with was attacked by a stag at Lyme Park. Apparently it just came out of the bushes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it apparently just came running out of the bushes and started butting her and like proper leathering her. And it took about 8 blokes to like chase it off. People have been killed by like rutting stags and things like that, you know, when they're... Imagine being killed by a horny animal. It's just fucking horrible, isn't it? There's no way to go. Like,
That's
what
so
happened to you?
embarrassing.
It's so embarrassing. But the problem was, it was because all the does were there, all the ladies were there, and he was with them, and then he saw us, and I was like, ah, shit, he might think that we're threatening his ladies, you know.
Yeah, you turn up in your gilet and your wellies and he's like, fucking, she's put them on for my lasses and I'm not having it.
I tell you what, the thing that, for someone who doesn't like hunting or anything like that, the first thing, because I was so frightened that went through my head, I was like, I fucking hate that stag. If I'd have had a gun then, I'd have shot it and I'd have put its head on my wall. Honestly, I just reverted to being the biggest cunt in the world. And of course I would never do that, but at the time I was like, I would have fucking killed it, the way it looked at me. It's so frightening. Huge, lovely creatures, but oh my God.
You turned into a real country girl. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I love it, mate. I mean, the thing is as well, I like being in the countryside. I like being at the seaside. I was meant to be going to Cornwall on the 1st of January. That's not happening now, is it? Because of all these new tiers. Also, I think it's very unfair, because we're in tier 3 here, tier 4 in London. I think it's a real cunt trick to go, oh, I'm still going to go to Cornwall, which is tier 2. Like, have a bit of respect for people. You know, go later in the year when it's safer, hopefully. So that's me. Anyway, been nice chatting to you. See you later.
It's nice having a catch up, isn't it? So,
lovely.
We are talking about, on Christmas Day, a serial killer known as the Santa Strangler. For a couple of reasons. One, because he sort of looks like Father Christmas. And one, because he does at least one of his crimes near Christmas, right?
He did kill someone on Christmas Day, and he does look like Sean Corn.
Yes. I'm glad you've adapted.
That's so funny. Sean Cornflakes. Sean Cornflakes. I can just imagine him in the supermarket laughing at it as well.
Oh yeah, being so excited. No one in this house has ever eaten cornflakes, so now we've just got a box of cornflakes because he wanted to do a joke in another language.
Because Sean Corn is on the front. Oh God. Right, so he's called the Santa Strangler. His name is Adolph Laundenberg, which Adolph is... There's nothing positive with the name, is there? Nothing ever...
No. Now, for context, he was born in 1926, which is obviously before the more famous Adolf. But I still think the fact that he kind of kept his name... I guess it's a link to his heritage, but surely after sort of like the 40s, you'd be like, oh, just call me Addy. Do you know what I mean?
Or
like
Dolph.
Yeah. You would, yeah, exactly. You wouldn't be like, no, do you know what? It's a really good name and it suits me. I'm sticking with it. Like, you can't reclaim Adolf. Like, it's gone. It's some things we have to accept, like get taken by the bad guys, like Twitter. And you just have to understand that, like, okay, well, that's not a place for us anymore. And Adolf is one of them.
I found out this week, listening to another podcast, that Adolf Hitler lived in Liverpool for a little bit, for a few months.
I can't believe that.
You know, I think it was with his half-brother or something like that. Fucking Hitler bobbing around in Liverpool. It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, isn't it mad to think that he was sort of there... maybe like 30 years before the Beatles were knocking around as well.
So weird. Yeah, I wonder what
really strange.
I don't know what he was doing there. But yeah, Hitler in Liverpool, fucking well mad.
That sounds like a Sky do those like urban legend series.
Oh yeah.
Where they'll it sounds like Hitler in Liverpool sounds like one of them.
It does. I'd be quite entertaining. That I think I'd watch it. One of his lighter works, I think. So obviously he's called the Santa Strangler. Looks a bit like Father Christmas, Sean Corn, if you will. and he did kill a woman on Christmas Day. We think he murdered 3 women, but there's definitely more. There's like 4 that he has definitely done. And he's a prime suspect in 2 other murders as well. He was born, have we said where he was born? He was born in Lexington, Kentucky. His parents were German immigrants. His father was a butcher. And his mother apparently died quite soon after he was born. She was a heavy drinker, suffered from alcoholism, which of course everyone said it was her fault. But let's face it, it was a fucking baby when she died, so I don't think he's got any memory or she had any impact on him. So stop having a go, yeah?
Well, I would say that, like, if there was a not an attachment form, that can lead to issues. But I wouldn't say that we can... There's thousands and thousands of children that grow up without a mother, and they're absolutely fine. So let's stop blaming dead women for alive men's misdemeanours, please.
Hear, hear.
They weren't a particularly affluent family, especially because if you think he's born in 26, the Wall Street crash is 29, so he would have been raised in the Depression.
You love throwing that fact in. You love throwing the Wall Street crash in.
Do you know what?
Because you know the date.
It's the only date I can remember. 1066, 1666, 1966. Those are the only, like... Do you know what it was? It's because there was in my history class in school, there was a timeline that went round the wall. So I know 1066 is Battle of Hastings, 1666 is the Great Fire of London, and 1966 England win the World Cup, and 1929 the Wall Street crash. So those are the only dates that I know. I can't tell you what year my dad was born in, but I will throw out Wall Street crash as soon as I get the chance.
Do you know what Will Duggan said to me the other day? I was saying to him, so I went into JD Sports, which is where I like to shop in the kids section there. And I was telling him that, I said, the service in shops is really bad at the minute, because I think people are just fucking fed up. And I said, I went in JD Sports. And he said, hang on, can I just stop you there? Can I ask you a question? I went, yeah. He went, do you remember the Berlin Wall coming down? I went, yeah, I do, actually. He went, yeah, then you're too fucking old to shop in JD Sports, aren't you? I was like, you fucking piece of shit. Absolute piece of shit. Awful. And do you know what?
That's such a funny thing to do. Yeah, be like, do you remember when Robbie left Take That? Okay, you're not allowed in Topshop. Like, it should be like
You get asked at the door.
So the family weren't very wealthy, and he was hustling from quite a young age. He used to make walking sticks out of wood that he found, and wood from this particular shrub, and he'd sell it, wouldn't he?
He did a bit of whittling, which I really like the idea of, actually. I think it's quite relaxing doing a bit of whittling. So he's making canes from this salvaged wood, and he loved making them, absolutely loved them. They're very nice by all accounts, and he loved to see people with them. Apparently loads of people in the area that he lived in had these walking sticks, and what he used to do, he'd either give them away for free because he just really enjoyed making them and seeing people with them, or he'd sell them for $10 on the street, which is weird because it seems a lot, $10, doesn't it? For that time.
Yeah, it does seem a lot for the time, but was there super inflation? I know there was in Germany, I just don't know if there was in America as well. So maybe actually just things cost more because money was worth less. But I don't know if you know, in 1929 there was a Wall Street crash, Rachel. So I think it's really interesting, isn't it, to be like, I loved seeing people with his things, because it's so strange to me to have a job where you would be pleased that people had your... If I heard anyone quoting my jokes, I'd be like, you're doing it wrong. Even like in lovely ways. Sometimes people will cross-stitch a joke of mine, or will do something and their wording is slightly wrong, and it makes me want to run into a wall as fast as I can. But also it's a lovely thing, so I don't want to go, actually I don't say that, I say this. So yeah, the idea of being proud that other people have your work is a completely alien concept to me.
I think as well, sometimes people make merchandise of the disclaimer and stuff like that, unofficial, may I add. And then do you remember when someone made a cup of the disclaimer for the podcast, and it was don't fucking say that. That's like the most basic. It was like one of those things where it had been translated from Chinese into English. I don't say any of that. And I had to say something. I mean, I couldn't just go, nice one, could I? I was like, yeah, it's just nice thought, but I don't fucking say that, do I?
I mean, you could have not
tea.
said something, but yeah.
Yeah, I know. The thing is with me, sometimes if you catch me in the wrong mood, I can be really fucking, just for no reason, In fact, I was really narky with somebody once on Twitter a while ago, and I actually followed him and DM'd him to say, do you know what? Sorry about that. I was a bit of a cunt there. Just totally unnecessary. Yeah, I felt really bad. I was just like, there's no need for that.
Well, I had a really nice conversation when we did the COVID arms. There were some people in the room, so afterwards we were talking. I was talking to Sarah Pascoe and Grace Petrie, who absolutely amazing, as anyone listening to this will know. And they both listened to the podcast, which is lovely, and they're being very nice about it. And Grace is saying, one of my favourite things is, she says, every now and then I'll be on Twitter and she was like, I'll hear Rachel in my head going, don't fucking at me, because I don't fucking care. And we were all talking about what your attitude to not taking people's bullshit and not allowing them to put their bullshit on you is so refreshing and so nice. Yeah, whereas I just like block people or mute them. Like, I don't want to get into it. But the fact that you just like basically hand them their ass and then block them is so funny.
Yeah, I can't leave something. I've got to say something. Like, I just think, no, you're not fucking having one over on me, you piece of shit. But as I say, but then when I am a bit hot-headed, because I always do apologise. Like, I'm like, I was a bit of a dick there, and I will say sorry. It's like, I was in McDonald's once a few years ago, getting me breakfast before I had to go to my miserable job. And I was a bit rude to the lad behind the counter, and I went up to him a bit later and I said, you know what? I said, I was really rude to you and I'm really sorry about that. And he went, yeah, you were actually. I was like, fucking come on, mate, I'm apologising. You're making it worse now. Just accept the apology, you know. Have I not suffered enough?
I love that you went up there being like, you know what, I'm going to be the bigger person, I'm going to apologise. And he's like, yeah, you were a fucking pig, actually. That's so funny.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I won't fucking bother again, mate. Anyway, where are we up to? Oh, yeah, so...
we were talking about his walking sticks and his whittling. What I was going to mention, sorry to get distracted, do you remember those brilliant prints that you bought me? There's a Nosferatu one and a devil one.
Oh, yeah. Richard Wells?
The guy who makes them, is he called like Slippery Jack or something on Instagram?
Yes, something like that, yeah.
So he put up a beautiful post the other day. His dad has like started whittling again, or like carving woodwork. Ooh. And he's made this fucking amazing out of wood, this ghost. And I wanted to DM him and be like, please, can I buy that? Honestly, it's so good. In fact, I might do that, guys. But don't you all go and fucking buy the ghost before I can.
Someone's already done it now.
Yeah.
Very talented, the pair of them.
Yeah, I hate talented families.
I think people like Darren Brown, I'm like, fucking hell, mate, how much more talent do you want? You can bend people's minds. You can paint to an amazing level. You're articulate. You're intelligent. What fucking more do you want, Darren? Yeah. Give one of those talents up.
I feel like that. I'm so, like, aggressively average at everything I do. And, like, what is it called? Well, I'm below average at quite a lot that I do. And I'm not very bright. And then it's just that thing of, like, just let me be excellent. Watch Celebrity Mastermind, you'll fucking see then.
What was your specialist subject, can you say?
Yeah, I think so. Inside Number 9 I did.
Do you know what? It's so funny because Tim was like, I bet it's the League of Gentlemen. And I was like, yeah I bet it is as well. But yeah, very good, yeah. Well, that's all right, isn't it?
I asked to do the League of Gentlemen and someone had done it too recently. So they were like, well, how about Inside Number 9? So I sort of said, because you get told you're doing it in like June or whatever. So I was like, yeah, fine. And then sort of I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. Like, I've watched them all, and I like them all, but like I was obsessed. Anything you knew when you were a teenager, because you're obsessed with it, right? So basically I was like, League of Gentlemen will be easy because I'm obsessive over that. Whereas I now have to learn how to be obsessive over Inside Number 9. Yeah. I'm just really bad at like I won't spoil it, but like I laugh at how badly I'm doing on it. Like I can't stop laughing at how badly I'm doing on stuff. Anyway, it's that was a good reminder that I'm not as clever as I think I am. Because my default is to be like, I think I'm quite clever, but then I'm like, oh no, I just went to a really bad school, and and when you go to a shit school, you definitely have a false sense of security. And now all my friends are like really smart and really cultured, and like have excellent degrees and are really articulate, and then I'm like, oh, I'm just a potato in a shiny outfit.
Oh my god, give over. It's so ridiculous. Oh god, come on, mate, it's Christmas Eve.
No, but I'm quite positive. I'm that potato that they use for a science experiment to run a clock. Like I've got a use. Do you know what I mean?
You're a useful potato.
I think I know
God.
people. No one fucking message me and say that I'm being self-deprecating or like tell me that I'm a queen or whatever. I don't need it. I'm surrounded by people who love me. It's fine. Also, I think we should all be fine with being average. Like, we can't all be stars and we can't all be excellent at everything. And it's absolutely fine to be like, I'm a bit thick and I'm not very good at a lot of stuff. We're not all the top 1%, and we shouldn't tell ourselves that we are. Like, let's all be a bit more realistic at the fact that quite a lot of us are quite shit at most things.
Yeah, it's not like the world's aligned in a way that you've missed out on something. Sometimes it's like you just can't do that. It's like singing. I can't fucking do it. So if anyone patronised me and said, "Oh, you could sing," I can't. You got to accept sometimes there's things that are beyond your reach.
Yeah.
Can't have everything, can you?
No. And also people who are too good at too many things, with the exception of Darren Brown. You know, they split their energies. Just be all right at one thing and you can make a living. That's my pep talk.
Here's something that I'm going to say. If I see one more fucking book with a quote from Stephen Fry on it, I'm going to lose my fucking shit. You don't have to have an opinion on everything,
This
Stephen.
is such a strange thing to take objection to. What's the issue?
Listen, I've been helping wrap Christmas presents, and there's been quite a few books in them, and it's like, there's so many different books that I've been wrapping, and then you turn it over and it's like, ooh, a triumph, Stephen Fry. And it's like, oh, fuck off, Stephen. Like, have a day off. Honest to God, you genuinely need to keep your fucking beak out a little bit. And this is what I mean, like, he thinks he's great at everything. It's all very easy. I don't know why we have this, like, he's the best. It's just because he's posh. It's like every fucking book, there'll be a book about, I don't know, the bloody Holocaust. Oh, triumph, Stephen Fry. Then there's another one about fucking, I don't know, a magical dog. Oh, fantastic, Stephen Fry. It's like, fucking come on, Stephen. You've not read all these books.
I think, isn't it the famous statistic is Stephen Fry is the last person to read every book that was made in his life? Well, or maybe he's just a voracious reader, Rachel Fairburn, and maybe he likes giving quotes. Someone's asked me to give a quote on their book, and someone said, will you read this book and perhaps give them a cover quote? And it looks like I'm saying no to them, but I basically said I can do, but I'm really thick, and I honestly think my name on the front of your book is going to be more of a hindrance. Like, it's going to put people off buying it. They're not going to be like, well, if Kiri Pritchard-McLean says it's a good book. I feel like it's having, like, I don't know, like Clifford the Big Red Dog giving it a thumbs up on the front. Like, no one comes to me for book advice. Do you know what I mean?
You know what it is, isn't it? This is something that really fucks me off, right? And the thing about Stephen Fry is like the epitome of this, right? In this country, we're fucking obsessed with somebody because they have a posh accent, right? And I get really sick of this attitude of if somebody talks to you as if they're peering over half-moon glasses on the television, that they're a fucking genius. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, actually, I think you'll find from checking my card that someone else has written, you're wrong. It's like, just fucking, I hate it. It really, really bugs me. Not having a go at Stephen Fry, but I'm having a go at the pomp and circumstance around him.
Yes, the concept of the essence of Stephen Fry. Well, I've got strong views on Stephen Fry, but that can wait for a live show. So
lovely. I will look forward to that.
Yeah. He's selling these walking sticks. Then he joins the army, doesn't he?
Yes, he served in the Naval Construction Battalion in Trinidad in 1944. And this is where he meets his future wife, Annelle. So he's quite young at this point. They get together quite young. She had a son called Steve. He adopted him, and they moved to California after Adolph left the service. And he had quite a few different jobs. He worked as a security guard at a steel plant. And then in the 1960s, he became a cab driver in San Pedro. Mm-hmm. Now, the marriage... So this is weird, because like afterwards, they ask... when somebody's been, found guilty of murder or, a bit of a wrong, and they ask the neighbours what they think. And I think they were really clutching at straws, because they said, oh, they were an odd couple, the Laundenbergs, very, very odd couple. Annelle, she worked at a dance studio and was very health conscious. And Adolph was generous and quiet and reclusive. I don't think that's weird. I don't think that's an odd couple. I think a lot of couples are like that.
Yeah, it's very strange that to me that's a dynamic that works, that she's outgoing and he's a bit more reserved. Because it's hard to have, two stars of the show. She was very into fitness, wasn't she? So worked in this dance studio. And Adolph was described as a gentleman, but what everyone says is oh, he's such a gentleman. He used to open doors for women. And I think that is such a low bar. I hate that also when people are like... I remember my dad saying to me once, he was basically arguing against feminism. And he was like, yeah, if it was a young woman, I'd just let the door go in her face. Because, young women are feminists. And I was like, okay, well, that's nothing to do with women's liberation. He's like, if they want their rights, I'll let the door go in their face. And I was like, that's just being rude. Like, I open the door for men. I don't go like, oh, you're a man, are you? Okay, I'll let the door go in your face. I was like, it's such a mad thing.
It's such, I don't know if I should tell this story. Years ago, when I worked at the town hall in Manchester, I was like, it's quite a quiet place, and there was loads of doors to the corridors and thing. And there was a guy who worked there, he was on 2 crutches, permanently. And I held the door for him once, and he said to me, I don't need your help. I was like, I was fucking being polite, mate. I'm not patronising you. Do you know what I mean? And honest to God, in that moment, despite the fact he was on 2 crutches, I just wanted to ping the door back, let it go, and fucking smack him right in his fucking face. Like, I was just giving some basic manners. Do you know what I mean? I would have fucking loved to have done that. Just pulled it back and just knocked him off his fucking crutches, the rude cunt.
What a reasonable response.
Yeah.
Well, I think, is it not just the case that he has... This is what's hard, isn't it? That when people have been treated badly, so when they've been sort of patronised and infantilised, that sometimes that they don't necessarily know how to... They assume that every interaction they have is based in that, as opposed to, like, you're just the kind of person who would open a door for someone.
Yeah, but also, here's another thing. I mean, it's not about 15 years later. Here's another thing. If you don't want my help, don't fucking walk so close behind me so that I have to hold the fucking door for you. Hang back, mate. Don't get up my ass with your fucking crutches. Stay back a bit, and then I won't have to open the door for you. I don't want to be in this transaction either.
Anyway, Adolph was known for being generous. And yeah, so he was known for giving things away and being very kind. Now, she falls out of love with him and leaves him. He marries again. I can't find any details on his second wife.
Not only does she fall out of love with him, she then outs herself as a stripper, which is like, okay. She's like, I don't love you anymore, Adolph, and there's something else you need to know. I'm a stripper. It's like the start of a really shit TV movie, isn't it?
Yeah, well, this is the thing, is all the language as well is like, she outs herself, and it's like, no, she just tells him that she is a stripper. That's not the same thing as like, and here's me outing myself. It's like, no, she's just going, oh, by the way, and this is what I do as a job. Like, it's such a strange... Yeah. It's because it's sex work, isn't it? So it's people being like, you have to... it's like real tabloid language that, like, after a romp, she outs herself as a go-go dancer. It's all that kind of, like, mad way of speaking.
Yeah, there's nothing on his second marriage. He moved to New Orleans for a little while, and then he came back to San Pedro. That's as much as we know. He just seems quite a quiet bloke until he starts kicking off, doesn't he?
Yes, and kick off he does.
Yes. Whilst he's working as a cab driver in San Francisco, he starts to pick up a certain type of woman. Now, he starts picking up lonely, alcoholic women. Women, he says, that reminded him of his ex-wife. But I don't think that's necessarily true. And he would sort of... Because he's driving around late at night, he'd wait for these women to leave places and, become vulnerable. And a bit like BTK, he would bind them, rape them and strangle them. Now, the victims, he referred to... Because he makes a confession, which we'll get to in a bit. He calls these 4 murders his 4 sins. The murders that he committed were... Sorry about this. There was Lois Petrie. She was found on December the 26th, 1972. So he killed her on Christmas Day, because she was last seen at midnight on the 25th of December in a bar. Now, she'd recently been widowed. Her husband had died of cancer. And she was last seen in the bar at midnight, and he picked her up and she strangled her. And yeah, she was found on Boxing Day. Horrible. After that, August the 19th, 1974, he tended to pick up women that were a bit older. He didn't pick anyone up that was significantly younger than him. So August 19th, 1974, Catherine Medina, she was found behind some bushes in Harbour Lake Park. She was 50 years old. She was an alcoholic who had been in a local bar, and her husband had come to collect her and was trying to get her to leave. So they eventually ushers her out, and as they're leaving, she runs off and she gets into a van with an unidentified man. And this was the last time she was ever seen alive. September the 4th, 1974, 54-year-old Anna Felch was found at 7:30am by a construction worker. Now, she was partially nude, strangled. She'd been sexually assaulted, as the other victims had. She was last seen at 1:30am when she left a bar in San Pedro. So, yeah, really. That's so weird as well. Like, found it horrible. Found at 7:30 in the morning and she was last seen at 1:30. That's just such a depressing passage of time, that, isn't it? Like, just hours later, you're dead. So horrible.
Yeah.
There was Leah Griffin as well, who was 60 years old. She was a legal secretary, and she'd recently been diagnosed with breast cancer as well. And she was found in a residential hotel in San Francisco. She'd been strangled, raped, and tied up. There's 2 other murders that he's suspected of as well. There was Irene Hind, who was 55. She owned Irene's Domar Club, which sounds fun.
Oh, yeah, it was a bar, wasn't it?
Yeah. She was described as a very generous person who sort of really got on with the people that came to the bar and very kind. And on March the 12th, 1974, she was found. She'd been raped and strangled as well. And there's Maud Burgers, who was 83. She was found raped, strangled in her apartment building. She was just a retired...
Isn't it Maud Burgess, like Tony Burgess?
Ah, sorry, yeah. Burgers sounded wrong as I said it out loud. I do apologise. It'll be Burgess.
Are you hungry,
Maud
mate?
Burgers. I am fucking starving, to be quite frank with you. So... she used to help manage her apartment building. The only evidence was there was a partial fingerprint at the scene, but it was found not to match Adolph's. So he's still suspected in that, but not proven. He was interviewed about these murders, though, but there was never enough evidence to link him to the crimes.
Yeah, because there wasn't any evidence. It was like the crime scenes and the people who went missing. There wasn't lots of information about them, and they weren't seen a lot. And the crime scenes, he must have been very careful, basically. And, there's not blood and, because it's strangulation. So, yeah, the case, basically, all these cases, they went cold. So, a few years after this, in 1975, his stepson, which I think by that they mean his adopted son, has got a partner called Jeanne. So they meet in California at college, and then they decide to move in together. So she's like, okay, I'll fly across to the other coast then and move in with you. So she flies to San Luis Obispo, is it? Obispo? Definitely the first bit is San Luis. She's gone ahead and gone, right, I'll find us an apartment to live in. And he's like, great, well, my dad will pick you up and he'll help you do that. So Adolph picks her up from the airport, and she says she remembers him as a very smiley man, a very kind man. They get on really well. So he would take her to the viewings for different apartments. They find one. So she puts an offer down for it, gets accepted, and then he's like, listen, I'll help you get it all kitted out, ready for him to fly over. So they go to flea markets, and he drives her around to help furnish the house and pick up stuff. Now, a few days into all this, he says, I'm in love with you. Bearing in mind, this is to his son's partner. So she's like, oh, okay. And she gives him the nickname of Amorous Adolph. And he starts leaving, notes for her, confessing his love. And, yeah, it gets very, very intense. Now, a few days before his son arrives, they're in the car together, and he says, I've committed 4 sins. And she says, okay, well, what do you mean by that? And he says, I raped and strangled 4 women. And she was like, what? And he seemed like deadly serious, and he's like, I raped and killed these women. And she had never, he was like, on this date and this date and this date in this area, and she had never heard of the women's murders, so she just didn't believe him, because she was like, surely if 4 women had been killed it would be bigger news. And then, because she doesn't believe him, he fucking goes mad. He loses his temper. He starts banging his fists on the car. And she could see that he's, really strong for an old guy. And she said, in that moment, I thought, yeah, he could be capable of doing this. By, how quickly he flew off the handle, basically. After this, she's petrified with this guy who's, obsessed with her and says, I killed women. So she goes and stays in the library, day and night, so she doesn't have to go home and be on her own. Then her boyfriend, bearing in mind that's his son, arrives. She says, listen, that your dad said this to me and I'm really scared. And they both agree to go to the police. So they go to the police. Now, the police don't believe her, the San Luis police. So they refer her to the LAPD, who took him in for questioning. And apparently he was very friendly, but very assertive. And he was like, no, of course not. And there was no evidence. He's got a clean record. So basically, it hits a dead end. But it was investigated. I think that there's a common misconception that it wasn't. But the LAPD did investigate it. A little while later, they get married, his son and Jeanne. And he wasn't invited. And they moved areas pretty fast. They moved to Pittsburgh. And so one day, she's in a house in Pittsburgh. And the mail comes. He's found their address. And he started writing these love letters to her again.
Oh my God.
Sends her postcard to the local area saying, I was just passing through and I thought I'd send this to you. So she's like, fucking hell, he's gonna kill me. She's terrified. And he apologises in these letters, says that he's still in love with her, sorry for scaring her off, all that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden they just stop. The letters just stop. But I guess the stress and strain of that, and potentially they weren't right for each other or whatever, but she divorces from his son. And so that's the end of that relationship. But, like, how intense is that?
Yeah, it's a bit much, isn't it? Like,
I would much rather that my partner's dad fucking hated me than sent me letters and confessed his love to me.
So weird.
27 years later, the almost exact same thing happens again. So it's 2002... and this is another daughter-in-law of his. It's Renee. Now, they have never met each other, Jeanne and Renee. She's actually divorced from his son at this time, but he's still very much in their life because he'd moved in with them for a bit. He'd live with Butch, his son, and the kids. He's a really good grandfather, so she sees him a lot. So he's living with her grandchildren and his son, and they're separated. Now, one day he tells her, he says, I raped and murdered 4 women in my lifetime. And he doesn't look at her when he says this. He's apparently just like looking at her out the corner of his eye. She's like stunned. She's like, what? So she's like, can you just repeat what you said?
Well, I was saying to you, like, imagine if you just didn't acknowledge it because you didn't hear, and he's like, I've just got to say that again.
Yeah, well, that's...
What was that?
Yeah, just sort of like... yeah, you spend a whole day building up the courage and then someone's like, what was that, sorry? Yeah, like, I'm sorry, I had a headphone in. What did you say? I bet there's loads of people who confess to murder, but no one was ever listening to them.
Yeah, someone just didn't listen at all. Like they were on the phone or something, pissing about, playing wordscapes. What was that?
So he confesses, and she's like, makes him repeat it. Word for word, he says it again. So she's like, what the fuck is going on? Because this is the guy who babysat their kids and used to take them for ice cream. And then she's like, how did you do it? She's asking him all these questions, presumably trying to ascertain whether it's true or not, or whether it's like a mad old man. And he says, I got a rope and I did a noose and I'd strangle them. And as soon as they have this conversation, it ends and she's like, I'm getting the fuck out of this house. She goes straight to the police station, tells everything to the police. So they go and look up these cases and they were like, hold on. She's giving us information here that was never released to the public. So it is information that only the killer would know. So they're like, oh shit. So they were like, right, can you call him and see if you can get him to confess again? So she's like, okay. And so this is the conversation. So he answers the phone. He goes, hello. And she goes, Grandpa. And he goes, yeah. And she says, hi, it's me, Renee. And he goes, yeah, how you doing? And she says, oh, I'm all right, Grandpa. We need to talk. And he goes, huh? And she goes, you dropped a bomb on me, Grandpa. And I haven't had anyone to talk to for days. And I'm going to explode here. Are you like, sorry for what you did? And Adolph says, I've took all my problems to the Lord. And then... which is like the ultimate get out of jail free bullshit card. Yeah. And then Renee goes, Grandpa, I need to know that everything with me is going to be okay. Because apparently he was really fond of her and really sort of like lovey-dovey, I guess, with her. So she's another fucking daughter-in-law of his that comes away thinking he's going to kill me. So she goes, I need to know everything's going to be okay with me. He said, oh yeah. And she says, And he goes, oh yeah, everything's fine. Yeah, I take my problems daily to the Lord, which is mad. And then Renee says, what about the ones you put on me on Thursday? And he went, well, mistakes are made.
It's just like the most vague conversation in the world. Why doesn't she just... I'm not like getting at her. Why don't you just say, you told me you murdered those women? Can you be a bit more leading in this, please?
And maybe that would scare him and he'd sort of cotton on to what was going on. So basically they don't get this confession for these San Pedro murders. So she was convinced that she was going to be killed next. Like absolutely convinced. So the police take it very seriously and they look up that an allegation was made years ago in a similar vein in the 70s. So they go and find Jeanne, and while they're there they said, listen, have you got any pictures of him? Because we're going to obviously go around and try and get evidence from the areas. And she said, oh yeah, I don't throw anything away. And they were like, well, have you got anything else from the time? So she goes up. In the attic, she's still got the love letters that he sent.
Wow.
And she also has a diary from the time in which she's written in it in 1975, that week that they had, well, that couple of weeks they have together. She says on one of the days, Dad confesses sins. So she has the date of the confession in there, which all this goes towards making her a very reliable witness, because she's got, you know, contemporary evidence from when it happened, and nothing's been doctored and it's all been kept safely. It's not hearsay. It's not, she can't say, oh, my memory was wrong. Like, it's all there. And they looked it up, and Dad confessing his sins comes 7 days after they first meet each other. A week into driving round, he's like, by the way, I killed some women.
Fucking hell.
Crackers.
Bad, innit?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely crackers.
So mad.
So they try and find him. He's actually really hard to track down at this time, because he's living in a mobile home, and he's just sort of like round about the place. He spends a little bit of time hanging out at a pawn shop, which is run by his friend Tony, which, by the way, is exactly, if my mum died, is exactly how my father would spend his days. He would absolutely move into a mobile home or a caravan. And in Wales, he's got his mate that he goes and hangs around with, who's like got a garage. He's a lovely guy, and he just sort of stands there for like 6 to 8 hours drinking shit instant coffee, sort of taking up space and sort of, you know, just hanging out. It's like a youth club. There's quite a lot of older guys who do it. It's like a youth club for sort of men who are like over 60.
Yeah. I think that's quite sweet.
It is quite sweet, but I imagine if I worked there, I'd find it fucking annoying. Just some like bored old man fucking sat there chatting shit. They spoke to Tony about it, who had the Porsche shop. By shop, I mean like body shop, like garage. And he said he was like one of the family. I used to call him Pops. So everyone thought that he was being framed because he was such like a kind guy. He was known as being generous with his money. So they just thought that this is just like someone trying to get rid of the evidence and frame someone else for it. Then they go, right, well, let's look at the DNA evidence. There's slides of DNA from Catherine and Anna, but they're old. They're like too badly degraded to actually get DNA from. And then so they say, have you got anything else? They're like, oh, no, there's nothing.
There's just there's something about the old DNA that makes me feel physically sick. Like, it's just really depressing, isn't it?
Yeah,
just all that bodily
the thought of old jizz in a bag somewhere.
Years.
Yeah, it's not ideal. Crusty old jizz. It sounds like a Pogue song. Crusty old jizz.
Crusty old jizz. Oh God, don't set me off.
They sort of hit a wall because there's no DNA for them, and they're like, we've got a confession, we've got reliable witnesses, he won't confess to us, but they don't want to scare him off, so they're just desperately going to the point where they go to the evidence room in San Pedro and go, can we just look through? And then the woman working there goes, yeah, because she said, oh, I guess you could look in that filing cabinet, that's full of stuff that's not on the computer system. Apparently it was a real long shot that there would be anything in there. Anyway, they're only looking for like 5 minutes, and they find in there Lois Petrie's DNA slides. Mm-hmm. And they've never been tested. And they're like, oh shit. So they send it off to the lab, but it's very old. They don't think that they'll necessarily get DNA from it. But about 8 weeks later, they're like, we've got a full DNA profile from that slide that you sent in. So they're like, oh shit, man. So they can't ask him for his DNA because they think that basically he'll jump the country when they do. So they now need to sort of like find him and get the DNA from him. So they find him in this camper van. They basically go around going up to all these trailer parks going, have you seen a man who looks like Santa? And then this is where they use some quite good like undercover police work, isn't it?
Yes. So what they decide to do is they get an undercover officer who's like, right, okay, this guy's really into his whittling and he loves talking about these walking sticks that he makes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go along and talk to him about his walking sticks, pretend I want to know more, and then take him for a coffee. Now, it's a good job he's a sociable kind of guy, Adolph, because if somebody said to me, hey, I really like your comedy, let's go for a coffee, I'd be like, do you want to fuck off, mate? Like, no, thank you. So he goes along with the undercover officer, and their plan is this. They get him to drink a coffee, so they're going to take his coffee cup to get his DNA off it. Now, he chats away, and he says, this is what he says to me. He says, oh, you know, thank God you want to talk to me about me whittling, because I thought you wanted to talk to me about those murders in the 70s. And it's like, oh, okay, mate. Also, on his coffee cup is a camera, isn't there? And a microphone. Is there a microphone as well? Which I think is amazing.
Not
How
on
do you
the
do
coffee
that?
cup.
Oh, on the...
You misunderstood.
Fucking hell, this is what I've been saying. Like, I can't believe... How did you not notice that?
No, mate, I met... When we were chatting about this earlier, they had a CCTV camera trained on a coffee cup, focused on it. Not that it was on... When I said it was on the coffee cup, I didn't mean it was fucking built into it. Like, surely you would have noticed that.
Ah, got you. So he finishes his coffee, has a little chat about his whittling, almost confesses to a murder, and then he leaves. Another undercover officer who's got a very important job of sweeping in to get the coffee cup, which is like the shittest job, isn't it? If you're an undercover police officer, people think you've got a really exciting job, don't you? And he just sweeps in and collects a cup, and they get the sample that they need. So the DNA from the mug matched the seminal fluid on Lois Petrie's corpse. What a horrible sentence. There was a bit of an argument, though, because he said that the DNA was obtained illegally or unfairly, he said.
Yeah.
Because he said it was there to be thrown out, it wasn't public property. But the police sort of said, tough shit, mate, it's done.
Yeah, it's one of those weird technicalities where people think that they can sort of, get around it. But it's like, no, mate, you left the coffee cup. And he's like, actually, that was still my property because a waitress should have picked it up. It's like, oh, fuck off, you arsehole.
Yeah, stop being so fucking pedantic. You've been caught, mate. Hold your hands up.
Also, stop blaming women for everything.
Yeah, exactly. So he was charged with Lois Petrie's murder, and he admitted to it as well, but he denied all the other murders that he was suspected of. His bail was set at $1 million, and he was eventually convicted of the first-degree murder of Lois Petrie.
So
when
he gets arrested and they're questioning him, he says, you're not going to get me shook up. He, refuses to confess, and then they say, well, we got DNA, and that's when he's like, well, I'll speak to God about that. And also, while I'm speaking to God, can you please get me a lawyer? So they don't actually get the confession that they want. So he goes to trial in November 2006. He's 80 at this point. He's very frail. The trial only goes on for 3 weeks. And the judge only deliberates for 1 day and then finds him guilty of first-degree murder, of which he is, I think, currently appealing against it. And he later...
He's 94 now. Give it a rest, mate.
Well, this is the thing, is that they link another murder to him outside the three of Catherine, Anna and Lois. And they basically said, we know he did it, but he's too old and he's on a life sentence anyway, so we're not even going to take it to trial.
Yeah.
But the DNA evidence in this trial is the oldest that's ever been used successfully and, been used as evidence in a trial. So that's an interesting little bit of trivia for your pub quiz, isn't it?
Very good, yeah. Very interesting.
So that
horrible old
the
DNA.
The Santa Strangler, which I think is a kind of inappropriate name because you think, oh, he dressed up as Santa, but it's just that when he was old, he had a beard and looked like Santa, like every man ever. And one of the crimes was carried out on... say Christmas Day. She was last seen at midnight on Christmas Day, so technically he's the Boxing Day killer.
Boxing Day.
Well, we hope that this has been a nice way to spend an hour or so on your Christmas Day. We hope you have a lovely time. We hope that Sean Corn has brought you lots of lovely things. And
Sean Corn!
We'll hopefully see you in the new year. And hopefully a live show. We're doing a show with Spooktown, which I'm really excited about.
I'm looking forward to that. That's in February, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if the world's back to normal, I hope it will be.
Oh, who knows?
Yeah, so who fucking knows? Tickets for that are on. They're definitely on my website. They'll be on Games Family Gift Shop's website. And is it called Podstop, the festival?
I think so. Yes, Podstop.
It's Anna's festival as well. It's our producer, the wonderful Anna. So Anna, if you're listening and we got your name of your festival wrong, sorry. I hope you have a really nice Christmas.
Yes, she's very proud of it. She's worked very hard on it as well. So let's hope it all goes ahead. But yes, we hope you have a nice Christmas. Thanks for being really good this year, even though it's been fucking weird. And we hope you're all right. And we'll see you soon.
Hopefully, yeah. And Happy New Year. Blwyddyn newydd dda. See you soon.
HNY. Bye.
Bye. That's the thing about the countryside. There's stags, but there's no fucking internet.